the last school board meeting, it seemed that like there was some communication problems between the school board and the administration. The middle school principal was giving his report, and the school board sort of launched into him about one aspect of that, the bullying that started all of this, and came in with stories about just horror stories that they'd heard from the community about bullying. And from an observer standpoint, it seemed like you guys were just going, you know, not even knowing how to respond to it. And you know, in particular, one of the incidents they were talking about, the urination on the snowmobile, didn't even happen at the school. Could you talk to me a little bit about how the board and the administration communicate?
Sure. I think that the last board meeting, when the data from discipline referrals was given by the middle school principal, in some respects, I'm not sure if it was understood to be just discipline referral data or if it was believed to be bullying and harassment. But the conversation moved, like you said, to bullying and harassment. And it wouldn't be the first time that there's been some conversation at the board table. The reports that the principals give are not things that we don't think about before we give that information. But we also expect that it will cause some questions, and it's certainly an attempt to keep the board abreast of things that they need to know about, not to try to hide things by any means. So when those questions came, I think the part that was difficult for the administrative team to respond to was as comments were being made or situations were described, what we knew was that some of those, at least we didn't think, we thought that some of those had not taken place at school. And in talking to the principals afterwards, there wasn't a good way to respond because it was like the information was sort of being given from various board members about various situations. And the bottom line of all of that is I think we all believe the same thing and want the same thing, which is we don't want bullying and harassment. And yet it felt like there was just this endless stream of things that were coming at us about bullying and harassment without opportunities to answer, but then on the other hand, probably being able to at least think through in this last month, so how do we prepare to bring answers to the table at the next board meeting? Communication between administrative teams and school board members has some pieces to it that may be different than they are in other organizations who have employees and have board members. We deal with people, and we deal with their behaviors, their health, their attendance, their achievement, their work performance, whether it be students or adults, and we're bound by confidentiality. There was a comment that was made, for instance, at the board meeting last month about a particular situation that if you're in our school setting, you would have known within one or two people exactly who that was being talked about. And it wasn't the situation with the snowmobiles, it was another comment that had been brought up. And the very first thing that runs through my mind is, oh my gosh, we are talking about student records, their behaviors, their health, their attendance, their achievement, and those are discussions that can't take place in public meetings without those individuals knowing that you're going to discuss them. I think often, my experience in the last 15 years as an administrator is that there are generally either some board members or all of a board who want to know a lot more about specific situations and people and events than they really need to know. If we end up in a closed session, if we end up in an expulsion of a student, they're going to get that information in that closed hearing session. And that does not take place at a public meeting, or it doesn't take place in a memo that I send to them. I'm pretty careful about sending information to the board presidents because both Iowa Association of School Boards, School Administrators of Iowa, and vice superintendents, you keep your board presidents probably on a higher level of information than you do other board members. And when those other board members need more information for decision making, you're going to give it to them.
It seems like there's a lot of people who go to board members demanding information, and then the board members attempt to try to get those people information from you. And a lot of this like I suspect, is confidential stuff. So they're forced to go back to the community members with nothing, saying, you know, I couldn't get an answer from you, which makes it look like you're engaging in a little bit of conspiracy to not put information out. What do you say to that?
You know, the first lesson I ever learned about that, it was the termination of a teacher in another district that I lived in. And my superintendent at that time, I was the principal, and he had talked me through how this was gonna feel and how this might all play out. And between he and I, the teacher who was involved in the situation, and our attorneys, for a great amount of the time until the actual dismissal, we were the only people who knew absolutely what the facts were. And at the first level of hearing at the board table, which the teacher asked to be public, even at that point, there was not a lot of specific information that I could give. And I learned right there how uncomfortable that feels and how people want to know. But the opposite side of that coin is I'm bound by the position that I have to protect the confidentiality of employees and of students. So I've learned to grow more comfortable in what I can say and what I can't. And one of the most difficult things for school board members, I think, is the people who do just what you're talking about, and really often with good intentions. I think they have absolutely good intentions, and I think most board members have good intentions as well, because I
don't think anyone serves on a board to be a bad guy.
No, and I think that when people come to you, generally any individual wants to try to help them, so they listen, and they may even say, well, I'll see what I can find out, or I'll take care of that for you, when in fact the response is, you need to call the teacher, you need to call the principal, you need to call the superintendent, whoever that might be, because really the board member is not in a position to do anything about that, number one, individually, and number two, they're just not going to be able to get the information from the school that they might think they need to have to solve some sort of problem or give an answer to someone else. Any number of parents would tell you that they talk with principals or they talk with a superintendent, not only from this school but other schools, that will say, but I can't tell you about X, that involves another student. But all I ever have to do is try it on as if it were my child or my grandchild, and who would I want telling that information about them? I don't want everybody talking about that. And so sometimes you have to sort of put that coat on and say, okay, would this be what I want shared about someone in my family, so why would I think that I need to know it or that I need to share it? And once something like a particular topic or a situation sort of is the highlight of a community, takes a long time to work through. I found out the accuracies about what's going on and how things are happening. And always my worry at the board table is that we stray off into conversations. I'm not saying we always do this, but my antenna sort of have to be alert to that, to advise the board presidents, we can't be talking about this at the board table right here. You tell me what information you need and how you want to have it, and we'll give you everything we can give you. It might not be everything you want, but it'll be everything that we know that we can give you. I feel very comfortable knowing what is safe and legal to talk about at the board table and what's not. And in small districts, often the department that you might want to talk about or the situation you might want to talk about involves so few people that we really are talking about a person, either a student or an adult that's part of our staff, that without their permission to talk about that, we can't talk about it right there. And that's hard because it feels like you're stopping the flow of information, and that bothers people. And it bothers me. I wish I could say more on many occasions, because I could feel like I had, not that I had not been truthful to you, but you knew everything that I did, but I can't do that.